Hello viewers, this is Dr. Divya Goyal, a neurologist based in Delhi. Seeing the response to my previous video, I am posting yet another video, this time on facial palsy. Facial paralysis is basically involvement of the seventh cranial nerve which supplies the muscles of the face, and thus the patient presents with facial weakness symptoms like inability to lift the eyebrow, widened palpebral fissure, flattened nasolabial fold, drooping of angle of mouth. So these are all the symptoms the patient presents with. Uh, Instead of discussing the topic in detail, I'll be actually navigating through 10 important points that we tend to miss out when we examine a patient of facial palsy. The first being when we have to differentiate between a UMN and LMN lesion. We all know that LMN lesions tend to involve the whole of the face and UMN lesions tend to spare the upper part of the face. But what if in a UMN lesion the patient is unable to close his eye properly? Then how do we differentiate from an LMN lesion? The ideology is very simple. In LMN lesion, both the volitional and the emotional movements are involved. But in UMN lesion, always remember, this is very important, that there is volitional emotional dissociation. Either the patient is either the palsy is basically brought about by smiling or any other emotional movements, or the palsy is brought about by volitional movements. So there is always a dissociation in UMN involvement. The second point to be emphasized is that in Bell's palsy also pain is very common, occurring in about 60% of the cases. So do not be misguided with the presentation of pain. The third point which needs to be emphasized is that even in cases of facial palsy, the patient may present with sensory symptoms like numbness or dysesthesias because of the involvement of trigeminal nerve along with the facial nerve due to extension of inflammation from the seventh nerve through the greater petrosal to the trigeminal nerve. The fourth important point is that certain rates, like the recurrence rate is about 12% in cases of facial palsy. If the patient is presenting with a recurrent palsy, always investigate him for Lyme's and sarcoidosis because both of them are treatable. Then talking about the percentages, here comes the fifth point, that 70 to 75% of the cases of Bell's palsy, they recover in about 3 weeks of time. But about 10% of the cases do not actually achieve a good recovery. 4% of them have a persistent weakness, and 17% of them have synkinesis, which I'll be discussing further. Then the next point is about the chronicity. Now, if the patient presents to you with a chronic facial palsy, the presentation is totally different from that of acute facial palsy, because the patient may present to you in a hypercontracted muscle state. It means the patient might have a narrowed palpebral fissure, a hypercontracted cheek muscle, and a very prominent nasolabial fold this way. So what happens is, we as a physician tend to miss out on the paralyzed side, and rather we consider the normal side, we mistake the normal side to be the paralyzed side, because if the patient is presenting like this, then the normal side might appear that it has a widened palpebral fissure and a flattened nasolabial fold. So do not make that mistake, and always tend to ask the duration of symptoms. Then coming on to the prognosis of facial palsy. Sometimes the patient doesn't present to you within the first 3 days when the steroids are given. Rather, he presents to you after 10 or 12 days of the onset of symptoms. How do we tell the patient whether he will recover or not? It's simple, just perform an EMG. If there come spontaneous fibrillations in the facial muscle study, then it basically portends a poor prognosis. So you can explain to the patient all the pros and cons. Then the eighth point is basically about the red flag signs in a case of facial palsy. When do we actually suspect that this is a severe case or this might need further evaluation? If it is insidious in onset, if it is progressive in nature, and if there is involvement of another cranial nerves apart from the seventh, like of the eighth cranial nerve, we suspect either a post-traumatic, maybe a temporal bone fracture, or we may suspect a Grady-Negos syndrome, which is the inflammation of the petrous apex, and so on. So these are the red flags. Then the ninth important point is, always emphasize on the eye care apart from giving medications to the patient. We tend on to give corticosteroids in a maximum dose of 1 milligram per kg per day for about 10 days in the first 72 hours to the patient if the patient presents early on. along with some antiviral treatment, and we just forget about everything else. But and the important thing is we need to emphasize to the patient that he needs eye lubrication from time to time, and he needs eye padding at night to prevent keratitis. uh, and the last point that I want to emphasize is, since certain residual abnormalities because of aberrant regeneration of the nerve are left in the form of crocodile tears, in the form of synkinesis, but we never discuss the treatments out. Now, what if the patient presents to you in OPD with crocodile tears? In this, what happens is when the patient tries to eat or make the movements of the mouth, there is spontaneous sweating. So what do? We can always offer the patient some anticholinergics, some antihistaminic drugs, or we can go in for intraorbital injections of alcohol, or we can also go for cocaine injections. If all these methods fail, then obviously we have to resect the lacrimal glands. Then what in cases of synkinesis? Now synkinesis is basically a simultaneous contraction of the mouth and the eye. So whenever the patient tries to eat, his eye also closes. So there is winking. So what to do in those cases? The easiest treatment is neuromuscular retraining. We basically train the patient how to use his muscles. For an example, when he eats, the eye tends to close. So what we ask the patient is to voluntarily lift his eyelid. So initially he is trained to perform this action with his hand, but further on he can perform it voluntarily. The second mode is Botox injections, but obviously the side effect is weakness of the muscles. Then we can resort on to the surgical treatments only if these two treatments fail. So these are some important points about facial palsy that need to be emphasized when dealing with a case. I hope this video helps you. Thank you for your patient listening.